I'm joined here by Louise LaPierre, who represents the town of Bouctouche, Canada, and who is one of the shortlist nominees for the Tourism for Tomorrow Awards here at the WTTC Summit. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Bouctouche, Canada is in New Brunswick, and that's the east coast of Canada. And Bouctouche was a town that was heavily hit in the 80s with the closures of fish plants. It had two fish plants, and the plants closed because the fishing industry took a downturn. And following that, the community got together, and I was part of the project in which they were looking at creating new jobs and sustainable jobs that would last through generations. So the company, the town got together with, got the individuals from the town and looked at where they could go. And they ended up at tourism because they had a lot of tourists that went by, but they didn't stop. So the idea was to create a destination. And with that, they went to work and identified the areas which they might be unique in. And one thing that they were unique in is that they have a 17-kilometer stretch of beach front that went out into the ocean called the sand dunes, which was neglected. A few individuals had camps on it, but the local people neglected that area. They went for picnics off and on. So they looked at how could we turn that into an icon and attract tourists to the area. And then associated with that, when that became the icon, the idea was to develop a boardwalk so people could walk over the dune, appreciate it, a nature center which people could be taught what happens on the dune so they could protect the environment. And the boardwalk is a very interesting 4-kilometer boardwalk which walks over the dune, and there are fine beaches on the side. And tourism began to come to the beach. We also then had only a single road going to the beach, so we had to build an infrastructure to ensure that the roadway didn't become too congested. So we did a hiking, biking trail from the downtown, and we also did a water taxi where people could leave their cars at an area downtown, take a water boat and water taxi out to the dune. And we also developed a farmer's market where local farmers could come sell their wares to people who were coming either from away or from the local areas who came to the beach. And we also developed a marina where people could come and park their boats while they came in. And at the same time, there was the development of a cultural center which looked at the cultural heritage of the area. It had been in place before, but it had not been tied together. So we tied all of this together into a tourism destination where you can come enjoy the beach, do some culture, take part in activities such as walking and biking.
And how did their lives, the way that they view making a livelihood change from fishing to tourism?
Well, it's quite a change because they used to go work in a fish plant and process fish for a lot of them, and there was a big change. The biggest change was for them to become small entrepreneurs. For example, there was no capacity in the community to accommodate the tourists, and there was no funding in place to build a Hilton, for example, and there wouldn't be a sustained population during the wintertime because it's very cold in the wintertime. So we then enticed the owners of bigger homes to turn them into bed and breakfasts. So from a zero capacity bed bed availability, they went to over 120 people. Now some of the fishing people have stayed. For example, oysters are still growing in the bay. And what we got some of the oyster people to do was to integrate the tourists into their work because they seen tourists as people who would interfere with their work. But we got them to look at glass-bottom boats, and they would go out and ply their wares over the oyster beds, and the people could pay $25 or $50 to look at how the oysters are being treated. And it became, at the end of the day, they had money in pocket where they wouldn't have had that money if the tourists hadn't sat in the boat and looked at the oyster production.
We is who?
We is who? We is a committee of citizens, and there were 7 citizens. I myself am a professor at the university, and I had been asked to come to the community to preside and chair this project.